I believe everyone has a copy, ladies and gentlemen, of the jury. The defendant, Rocky Arlene Cathey, is charged in counts 1 and 2 in the indictment with the crime of a child. In count 3 in the indictment, the defendant is charged with the defendant pleads not guilty to each and every offense embraced in the indictment. Before we begin the trial, I would like to tell you a little bit about what will happen during the course of the proceedings. I want to describe basically how the trial will be conducted and what the attorneys, jurors, and judge will be doing over the course of the trial. At the end of the trial, I will give you more detailed instructions on how you're to go about reaching your decision. But now I simply want to explain how the trial will proceed. For you to find the defendant guilty of this offense, the state must have proven beyond a reasonable doubt that the defendant either intentionally, knowingly, or recklessly had unlawful possession of the alleged victim, and the alleged victim was more than 3 years of age, but less than 13 years of age. The defendant is charged in count 3 in the indictment with rape. For you to find the defendant guilty of this offense, the state must have proven beyond a reasonable doubt that the defendant either intentionally, knowingly, or recklessly had unlawful possession of the alleged victim, and that accomplished without the consent of the alleged victim, and the defendant knew or had reason to know that at the time of the that the alleged victim did not consent. The defendant has pled not guilty to the charges. He is presumed innocent and may not be found guilty by you unless, after hearing all of the evidence, attorneys' arguments, and instructions of law, the 12 jurors seated in this case unanimously find that the state has proven its case beyond a reasonable doubt. I will decide which rules of law apply to the case. My decisions will be reflected in my responses to questions and objections the attorneys raised during the trial, as well as in my final jury instructions. It is your job to determine what the facts are from the evidence. You must then apply the law in my instructions to the facts, and from that application you will arrive at a verdict. The state has the burden of proving the guilt of the defendant beyond a reasonable doubt, and this burden remains on the state throughout the entire case. Keep in mind that the defendant is presumed to be innocent of the charges against him. Thus, a defendant is not required to prove his innocence, or to have his attorney make any statements or arguments, or to produce any evidence. Reasonable doubt is that doubt created by an investigation of all of the proof in the case, and an inability after such investigation to let the mind rest easily as to the certainty of guilt. Absolute certainty of guilt is not demanded by the law to convict of any criminal charge, but moral certainty is required, and this certainty is required as to every element of proof necessary to constitute the offense. In making up your mind and reaching a verdict, do not base any decisions on the fact that there were more witnesses on one side than on the other. Likewise, do not reach a conclusion on a particular point just because more witnesses testified for one side on that point. Your job is to think about the testimony of each witness you heard and decide the facts. I sustain an objection to a question. The witness will not be permitted to answer the question. Do not attempt to guess what the answer might have been had the witness been permitted to give it. Similarly, if I tell you not to consider a particular statement that was made, you should put that statement out of your mind, and you may not refer to that statement in your later deliberations. Some of you have probably heard the term circumstantial evidence and direct evidence. These are the two basic types of evidence that exist in law. Direct evidence is direct proof of a fact, such as the testimony of an eyewitness. Direct evidence is those parts of the testimony admitted in court which refer to what happened and was testified to by witnesses who saw, heard, or otherwise sensed what happened firsthand. If witnesses testified about what they themselves saw, heard, or otherwise sensed, they presented direct evidence. Circumstantial evidence is all of the testimony and exhibits which give you clues about what happened in an indirect way. It consists of all of the evidence which is not direct evidence. Do not assume that direct evidence is always better than circumstantial evidence. According to our laws, direct evidence is not necessarily better than circumstantial evidence. Either type of evidence can prove a fact if it is convincing enough. A defendant may be convicted on direct evidence, circumstantial evidence, or both. The court will not provide you with a transcript of the testimony at the end of the trial. Therefore, you must listen very carefully to the testimony. Each of you will be allowed to take notes during the trial for your own use during your deliberations. You are not required to take notes. Independent memory can be as accurate as written notes. If after your deliberations you find the defendant guilty of any offense, the court will set the punishment at a separate sentencing hearing. The jury will not be involved in setting the punishment. This completes my opening comments to you. The next phase of the trial is the formal reading to you of the indictment in this case.
20. The grand jurors of Dickson County, Tennessee, duly impaneled, sworn upon their oaths, do present that between May the 1st, 2014 and May the 30th, 2015, in Dickson County, Tennessee, and prior to the finding of this presentment, Rocky R. Lee Cathey then and there did unlawfully and knowingly set A.H., a person less than 13 years of age, in violation of Tennessee Code Annotated 39-13-522, against the peace and dignity of the state of Tennessee. Count 2. And the grand jurors aforesaid, upon their oaths aforesaid, do further present and say that between May the 1st, 2014 and May the 30th, 2015, and prior to the finding of this presentment, in the county and state aforesaid, Rocky R. Lee Cathey then and there did unlawfully and knowingly age a person less than 13 years of age, in violation of Tennessee Code Annotated 39-13-522, all of which is against the peace and dignity of the state of Tennessee. Count 3. And the grand jurors aforesaid, upon their oaths aforesaid, do further present and say that between May the 7th, 2016, and May the 30th, 2018, and prior to the finding of this presentment, in the county and state aforesaid, Rocky R. Lee Cathey then and there did unlawfully cite A.H., and Rocky R. Lee Cathey knew or had reason to know at the time of that A.H. did not consent, in violation of Tennessee Code Annotated 39-13-503, all of which is against the peace and dignity of the state of Tennessee. Signed, W. Ray Crouch, Jr., District Attorney General.
To that indictment, how does the defendant plead?
Not guilty, Your Honor.
Plea of not guilty is entered. Next stage will be the opening statements of the lawyers. State will go first.
The role of a stepfather is to step in and stand in the shoes of the father when he cannot or will not. He's supposed to take her to father-daughter dances, hold her hands on walks, teach her to find and use her voice. Instead, the defendant took his 11-year-old stepdaughter to his bedroom. Instead of holding her hands, he held her arms. Instead of giving her a voice, he held his hand over her mouth to silence her. And there he raped her. He did this repeatedly until he and her mother separated when she was 15. Her name is Alexis. She's now an adult. It's been almost 3 years since she told her therapist what the defendant did to her. She was 17 at that point. A referral was made and Detective Katrina Pulley came to talk to her. At first, she would not disclose what happened, but she ultimately told Detective Pulley and agreed to a forensic interview with the Child Advocacy Center here in Charlotte. And during that interview, she revealed more of the events that you will hear about today. Detective Brent Johnson spoke to the defendant, and you will get to hear that interview. The defendant denies that he was his stepdaughter. He was married to her mother, Misty, for more than 10 years. But during those 10 years, he says he was hardly ever alone with the victim. He says that she did tell her mother that something happened, but he says she was lying. At the time of that interview, shortly after Alexis's disclosure, the defendant had been coming back around the house, back around Alexis. Because of the passage of time at the point that this was reported to law enforcement, there was no physical evidence of this act to collect. Alexis will tell you that she told many people what was happening, but no one got her help. The defendant is charged with 2 counts of rape of a child for sexual before the victim reached the age of 13, and 1 count for acts after she turned 13. At the end of this trial, after you've heard all of the proof, the court will instruct you on the law. And at that point, with the evidence and the law, you will have the tools that you need to deliver a just verdict.
Ultimately, your job in this case will be to try and make sense of a story that you were not there to see, based upon the testimony, the words of witnesses from that witness stand. Words can be powerful, right? They can end relationships, they can start wars, they can ruin lives. And the state's case in this matter rests almost entirely upon the words of Alexis Harrison. There will be no DNA, there will be no confession, there will be no smoking gun in this case. And to be sure, Alexis Harrison's story is powerful. Her words are the kinds of words that move you in the deepest parts of your heart. But the problem with words is that they can be powerful. They can be moving, even when they're not true. And as you consider in your mind the truth of Alexis Harrison's words throughout the course of this trial, it will become increasingly clear that her story just doesn't make sense. Because Alexis Harrison's story is that her stepfather forcibly, violently, repeatedly, for years, and yet no one noticed. Not even her own mother, who lived with her every day, the entire time. And Alexis Harrison, she'll tell you that she tried to tell everyone, including her own mother. And nobody did anything. Nobody believed her enough to pick up that phone and call the police. Why? You see, the state had better have a very good answer to that question. Because the obvious answer, the answer that common sense just screams at you, the answer that the evidence you will hear throughout the course of this trial will make it more and more reasonable to doubt the story of Alexis Harrison, is that it's because he didn't do it. Thank you.
They may call your first witness.
State calls Detective Katrina Pulley. Are you Detective Katrina Pulley?
I am.
And so we are recording because we don't have a court reporter here, so you got to make sure, I know you're loud.
I am. That's
But-
why I kind of pushed it back. a
Yeah,
little.
but you got to make sure you're speaking right into it so that we're producing a recording for the appellate record. And Detective Pulley, where do you work?
Dixon Police Department.
And as a detective, is part of your responsibilities investigating child abuse crimes.
It is.
Now, in this case, you got involved because of a referral. Is that correct?
Correct.
And that's something that you get from DCS that sends you out to find out what really happened.
Correct.
When you got that referral, what did you do?
Myself and DCS investigator Misty Elliott went to try and find the victim so we could talk to her.
Now, in a case like this, do you work with DCS usually?
I do.
And so she was with you at all times that you were involved in this case?
Correct.
And who did you end up going to talk to?
We ended up finding Alexis Harrison at her, I believe it was either her cousin, maybe her cousin's house. And we made contact, which she is the victim.
Did she know you were coming?
No.
Did she appear to be surprised in any way?
Yeah, I guess.
Did she initially make a disclosure to you of any abuse?
No.
Explain your process sitting down to talk to her.
Okay. So when I arrived on scene, Alexis was inside of the residence. I asked her to come outside to talk to me. We actually sat on the front porch. of the residence, and I asked her, I told her that we were here because I'd received a DCS referral in reference to abuse, and she would be the victim. She first said no, and I said, well, in the referral, it states that you have told somebody that your stepdad had sexually abused you. She started crying, and then she admitted that that was true. At that point, I asked her if she knew her private parts, where her private parts were located on her body. She did. And I asked if her stepdad had touched her private part, and she stated yes.
Hearsay.
Judge, it's for the effect on the listener. At this point, she's going to be setting up the next step because of those disclosures.
All right, I'm going to allow this to be introduced over the objection solely for the purpose of showing not for the truth of the statement contained, but rather for the state to be able, through this witness, to show what the next step was, and it's for that limited purpose.
What did you do because of her disclosure?
Because of her disclosure, I stopped talking to her and advised her that I would get in contact with her mother, and we would set up a forensic interview at the CAC, at the Child Advocacy Center.
Now, you're a detective. You interview people all the time. Is that right?
Yes.
Why would you set up a forensic interview instead of interviewing her yourself?
Well, I always use the CAC, the Child Advocacy Center, mainly because it's recorded, not only audio but video, and it's one-on-one, and that way the recording is something that I can have, or whoever is investigating can have, and we don't have to go back and keep talking to the victim over and over again. And also, it sometimes is admissible in court.
And did you go and observe her forensic interview?
I did. Maybe not all of it, but some of it, yes.
And without going into other parts, there's one part that we do have to talk about. Did you learn whether or not the abuse happened in the county or in the city?
I learned that the abuse actually took place in the county.
And why does that matter to you as a city police officer?
It would be out of my jurisdiction to investigate that crime, and at that point in time, I notified a detective in the county to come up to the CAC.
Judge, I have nothing further at this time.
Cross-examination?
One moment, if we could hear. No questions.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You may step down and you can remain, or you may leave.
Thank you, sir.
Or your next witness. Okay.
I guess I should have fit. The state's next witness would be Alexis Harrison. Alexis, one of the things with a trial is that we are having to make a record, which means that I may have to, and it sounds like you're doing pretty good, but you got to make sure you're always talking into the microphone so that everything's recorded, okay?
Yes, ma'am.
Are you Alexis Harrison?
Yes, ma'am.
Alexis, how old are you?
I am 19.
Who is your mom?
Misty Cathey.
Was your biological dad part of your life growing up?
No.
Was there a point in your life where you got a dad or a stepdad?
Yes.
Who was that?
Rocky Cathey.
When did he come into your life?
About whenever I was 5 or 6 years old.
And when he came into your life, did you end up living together?
Yes.
Okay. Can you explain where you ended up living together?
First, we ended up living together at my Nana's house, Terry Allward, and then we moved into his apartment.
Who is Nana?
Nana is my grandmother, Terry Allward.
Is it your mother's mother?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So you and your mother and Rocky moved in with Nana.
Yes.
Did anyone else live with you guys while you were with Nana?
Danny and Coda, they would come over sometimes over there on the weekends.
Okay. So Danny is Danielle Cathey.
Yes, and Coda is Dakota Cathey, Rocky Cathey's daughter and son.
So they were his children.
Yes.
How old are they compared to you?
Coda is 1 year older than me, and Danny's a couple years younger than me.
About how old were you when you lived with Nana?
I lived with her since I was born, and then at age about 8 or 9, we moved into his apartment,
Okay.
and then into.
Let's go ahead and talk about that for a second. So
Okay.
his apartment, do you remember where that was?
I don't.
Was it here in Dixon?
I think so, yes.
And Rocky Drive, was that here in Dixon County?
Yes.
It was in Tennessee City?
Yes, ma'am.
So the progression is he and your mom start dating, and he moves in with you guys at Nana's house.
Yes.
Then you move to his apartment, and then to a house on Rocky Drive.
Yes.
Okay. I'm going to go step by step because we're telling the jury this story. It's the first time they've heard it.
Yes, ma'am.
So how long did you, and some of this may be repetitive, you met him when you were 5 or 6.
Yes.
When did you move from Nana's house to the apartment? Roughly.
Roughly
And it can be a grade or an age or a year.
about 7, 8, I think.
Okay.
I'm not too sure.
And when, and it may be easier as we go through, so let me back up and try a different angle, okay?
Okay.
What was Rocky like as a dad?
At first, he was pretty good because he made my mom happy. And, well, I mean, she wasn't happy, most of the time because she was alone. But whenever she first met him, she was happy, so I was happy for her. And I was happy to get a dad.
Tell me a little bit about your mom's mental health before Rocky.
She was sad most of the time. She drank, but she was mostly just sad, not really there. She worked a lot.
Where did she work?
NHC.
What kind of shifts would she work?
All day. So she'd probably be there at 7 o'clock in the morning till probably about 4.
When you were in school, how did you get to school?
Bus.
Would she leave before or after you got on the bus?
She would leave after.
When, at any point in your life, have you talked to a therapist?
Yes.
How old were you?
I was about 17, I think I was.
Did you tell that therapist anything about what Rocky had done to you?
Yes, ma'am.
Approach.
Ladies and gentlemen, if there's an objection, we don't have a court reporter, so it needs to be on the record. I'll need to ask the jurors to step out. Ladies and gentlemen, if you'll step across the way, please. All right, Mr. Mitchell, what's your objection?
Well, I guess I'm going to be the one arguing. So basically, it's a twofold objection, Your Honor. First is that it's hearsay, but also the second part of the objection would
Let
be.
me make sure I'm understanding. Are you objecting to her statements to the therapist? Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
But we're also objecting to relevance. Specifically, I think that the purpose for introducing this testimony is to create an implication that the therapist is the one who reported it to DCS, and pursuant to TCA 371409, the identity of a child abuse reporter to DCS is confidential. And so the relevance of her telling her therapist to create that implication, our argument would be that that's improper. Especially since they, to my knowledge, don't have the therapist here to testify that she's the one to have made that referral. And I believe in reading TCA 371409 that she would be able to do that, but it would be inappropriate to have another witness testify that either the therapist is the one who made the referral or that there's some implication that that's who made the referral.
Any response?
Yes, Judge. So my question, if I can go back to that, was did you tell the therapist what happened, any abuse from Rocky? I may have not gotten the exact wording of the end of that, but it was did you tell? Question does not call for hearsay. Second, the remainder of that statute about the identity of DCS identity remaining, or the referent being confidential, If you continue to read on, it basically says unless the criminal justice process says otherwise. The court can order it be revealed. It's always available to the state in criminal prosecutions. There's no problem with the conflict of that statute. And Judge, I am absolutely 100% arguing for the inference that the therapist made that referral. Therapist is not here to testify. Now, am I going to have a witness that gets up and says the therapist made the referral? No. Can I ask this witness, is it appropriate to ask this witness, did you tell a therapist that this abuse happened, and was that a few weeks before, or a few weeks or days before Detective Pulley came to talk to you? Those are appropriate questions. They don't get into hearsay. They don't come crossways with the confidentiality statute, and there's no improper inference. It's a totally proper inference.
Judge, if I may briefly respond.
First of all, let me ask this question. When you ask her if she told the therapist, are you going to get into specifics about what she told the therapist?
Just that there was a sexual abuse allegation that she told the therapist. And then the next question is, was that in the same time frame that Detective Pulley came to talk to you? And was it before or after, to clarify that time frame?
Mr. Simpson?
Judge, in reading the statute, the court looks, the only court that's permitted to release the identity of the child abuse reporter is the juvenile court. And while it's certainly true that the nature
What
of
is the statute again, please?
TCA 371409.
371409.
Yes, Judge.
Last section, which is subsection F of that statute, states, except as specifically provided in this chapter, nothing in this chapter shall prevent the department from sharing information with the district attorney general and law enforcement personnel for the purpose of cooperating with the law enforcement investigation. Information from department records that is shared with the district attorney general or law enforcement by the department shall remain confidential to the same extent that information are not shared with the district attorney general and law enforcement is confidential, unless otherwise ordered by a court, or to the extent that such information is used for criminal prosecution, or to the extent required under the Tennessee Rules of Criminal Procedure after criminal charges have been filed. Any portion of shared information that does not become part of the court record shall remain confidential to the same extent as information not shared. Based upon my reading of the statute, it clearly allows that the information can be shared, but nonetheless, in this question and answer that's being solicited, is not asking to reveal the name or identity of the person that's reporting it or the records itself. It's more asking this witness if she saw a therapist, if she told the therapist what had happened, which she's testifying and therefore subject to cross-examination. And for that reason, I believe that the questions are appropriate and will allow the questions to proceed and overrule the objection.
Judge, if I could, and I don't think that this will change the court's ruling at all. I just want to put on the record for the purposes of potential appeal is that part of the hearsay, part of that objection was that essentially introducing information about the report, if the state decides to do that, would also violate Mr. Cathey's right to confront the witnesses against him because the report itself is inherently testimonial.
I don't find that to be a violation of your client's right of confrontation under the Sixth Amendment, and therefore I do not find that it is a basis to exclude the information, but we'll note your objection for the record.
Thank you, Judge.
All right, we're ready for the jury.
And Judge, so that the witness understands, I'll start with a new question when the jury gets in, okay?
Okay.
Alexis, did you tell your therapist when you were 17 that Rocky had done something to you?
Yes.
Did you tell her it was something sexual in nature?
Yes.
Was that around the same time that Detective Katrina Pulley came to talk to you?
She came probably about a couple of days later.
Detective Pulley, when she first asked if something had happened to you, what was your reaction? Did you tell her?
I didn't want to at first
Why?
because I didn't want my mother to hate me or find out.
Let's talk about that for a second. You're going to talk about several different things that happened several times. Who did you tell about what happened?
I told, excuse me, I told my cousin, and then she told my mother, aunt, and uncle, and Rocky, Cathey.
Objection. I don't think that she can hearsay, essentially.
Saying you can talk about who you told, but then you can't repeat what you think someone else said, okay?
Okay.
Sustain the objection.
You told your cousin.
Yes.
Who else did you tell?
I told my aunt and uncle,
What's your aunt's name?
Helen Potter.
When you told your cousin and you told your aunt, did your mom get involved?
She did.
Did you tell her what happened?
They told her, and I told her, yes.
Okay. It's okay if there are other conversations, but as part of what happened, when you told your aunt, did you end up talking to your mom?
Yes.
And what did she do?
She sat me down and asked me if I was lying, and I said no. And then they told me that I was lying, that I was making it up.
Why didn't you tell anyone outside your family?
I was scared they wouldn't believe me because they didn't.
So let's go back to your conversation with Detective Pulley.
Yes, ma'am.
You initially told her no.
Yes.
Did she stop talking to you?
No. She kept on.
And did you ultimately tell her that something had happened with the defendant?
Yes.
And we're not going to go into what you said then, but you gave her some details.
Yes, ma'am.
And did she talk to you about doing another interview with somebody else?
Yes, ma'am.
Now we're going to start and try to go through sort of how the progression of what happened.
Yes, ma'am.
When was the first time that something sexual happened with the defendant?
I was about 5 or 6 years old.
Where were you living at that time?
My grandmother's house.
What was the first sexual thing that happened with the defendant?
We were watching a movie. We were in the bed, and he started touching me.
So let me back up. So you were in a bedroom. Whose bedroom were you in?
My mom's.
And she and Rocky shared that bedroom?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And do you remember, was it daytime or nighttime?
It was daytime.
Do you remember what movie you were watching?
I do not.
Tell me about how the room is set up.
The bed is against the left wall. When you walk into the room, the bed is right here, and the TV and the dresser is set up right here.
So you're gesturing as if they are across the room from
Yes.
each other. So there's a bed, a dresser with a TV on it. Is there any other furniture in the room?
There's clothes on the floor. I remember that. That's about it.
What size bed was it?
Probably a queen size.
Okay. Who all was in the room when you were watching the movie?
Danny, Coda, my mom, and the defendant.
Is everyone in the bed or somewhere else?
Everyone's in the bed.
That's a lot of people in a queen-size bed. Can you explain that a little bit more?
So we were quite little, so I was on the edge of the bed. Then there was the defendant, and then Danny and Coda were moving around the bed, and then my mom.
Were you under the covers or on top of the covers?
Under.
Tell me about what you mean when you say he touched you while you were watching a movie. What did he do?
He put his fingers inside of mine.
Did he say anything?
He just told me to be quiet.
Did you have any idea what was going on?
No.
How long do you think that lasted?
A couple minutes.
Did he do anything with his fingers? I don't know.
No.
Did you and he talk about that after it happened?
No,
Why didn't you tell anyone at that point?
because he would tell me that it was okay and that he was just teaching me.
What did he say he was teaching you?
He said that he was teaching me for my future husband so that I would learn.
Is that something you just heard the first time that he touched you?
No, it happened every time.
How did incidents like that, where he touched you inside your vagina, happen? How many times do you think that happened?
Over 20 times.
Is that the only actual thing that he did to you?
No.
What else did he do?
Sorry, just give me a second.
You're fine. Take the time that you need. There are some Kleenexes up there.
He would put his inside my vagina
Did that start happening when you were 5 or 6 or later on?
later on.
How old do you think you were the first time he put his penis out your vagina?
About 8 or 9.
Where were you living the first time it happened?
The trailer.
So at that point, you had left Nana's house and you were living in the trailer, but you had not yet moved to Rocky Drive.
Yes, ma'am.
And you
Your
think
Honor, I'm sorry, but we're going to ask for another jury out. Objection.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, you're asking for a jury out?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, if you'll step over.
Your Honor, we're going to make an objection here as a 404B objection to the fact that there are 3 counts that are on today, and they all occur, well, 2 of them occur in 2014 to 2015, and 1 of them occurs after 2016. And the state's getting into acts that are not indicted that happened 6 years before that, and we're about to start into another act that happened at a location that's not part of the alleged indictment. These are all, I assume, prior bad acts that are, I assume she's going to continue doing this, and I don't know which direction, how many of these we're going to go through that are not involved in the actual allegations.
Gentlemen, you've heard the objection as to the fact that some of this evidence is involving things when she was substantially younger that's not part of the indicted offenses. You have a response?
Judge, this is part, when it was first indicted, it sounded like these were grooming allegations, earlier behavior, and the indictment was based on the CAC interview. It is impossible to separate. There were acts that occurred before the indicted charge. That's what we've gone into. And it's impossible to start with the first charge here. At some point, the state has to elect, but in a child abuse case, it is very, the state rarely charges every single incident that happened. In explaining what happened to you, and what happened to her, why she told or didn't tell, it's important to understand what led up to the charged offenses.
But in doing so, you're introducing evidence of other prior sexual acts which are not part of the indicted charge, and that's the very nature of the 404, other bad acts and so forth. I understand your theory, and the fact is that you have indicted. It's not required that the state specifically identify the exact same day of a sexual abuse that occurs in a child, and that's why the state is allowed to introduce evidence and have an indictment that charges between May 1st of 2014 and May 30th of 2015. And you've alleged 2 different child, count 1 and count 2 of that. But to go prior to that and start talking about, much preceding that, I think is in fact evidence of prior bad acts that are not directly connected, unless you have some authority that would allow you to do that, I am of the opinion that the defense's objection is correct and that you would be limited to having her testify about events that occurred within the time frame of your indictment.
May I have a moment, Judge? I would say that looking at 404B, I note that the wording of the statute is evidence of other wrongs or acts. Child abuse is a continuing offense. I realize that these are from before the dates listed in the indictment, but they should be admissible to explain the victim's disclosures and non-disclosures and the timing of them. And I apologize for not requesting a jury out to go into that evidence.
Mr. Mitchell, you were standing a moment ago. You have something you wish to...
Just, Your Honor, I was going to say that we would ask that the previous testimony of an event that occurred when she was 6 years old be struck from the record, and we're only asking for a jury instruction at this time. We're asking for them to be instructed not to consider those facts, and that the
I think
state would be allowed to get into
it's
it.
proper to testify that, she can testify that, this was, when she reported this and why these dates are important according to the indictment. And I don't think you can preface that by having her testify about all of the times prior to that date of that indictment. So I'm going to sustain the objection, and I'll instruct the jury to disregard the testimony regarding events that occurred prior to the dates of the indictment, and then allow you to go into those dates with your testimony. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. As I told you, there are times when I have to make rulings on the admissibility of certain evidence. In this case, the defendant is charged in a 3-count indictment with offenses that occurred during specific periods of time. Those indictments that were read to you alleged periods of time between May 1st of 2014 and May 30th of 2015, and then May 7th of 2016 to May 30th of 2018. Those are the time periods for which you must consider the evidence to determine whether or not the defendant has been proven beyond a reasonable doubt to have committed a crime during those time periods. So I have sustained the defense's objection to testimony that would have occurred prior to those time periods, and I'm instructing you to disregard that testimony. We will now proceed with further questions.
Alexis, we're going to zero in on a specific time frame, okay?
Okay.
From May 1st of 2014 to May 30th, 2015.
Okay.
So I want you to set that time frame. Where were you living at that time?
I think we were living at the trailer.
Can you think back to what grade you would have been in?
Can you tell me the dates again?
May of 2014 to May of 2015. So the school year of 2014-2015.
Probably in 7th or 8th grade. Off the top of my head, I think so.
We're making you do math on the stand.
I'm sorry.
I'm going to show you a photograph of youth from 2015, okay?
Okay.
Do you recognize that photograph?
I do.
What is it?
It was the day of my choir.
What choir were you in?
It was just a school choir.
So what school were you in at that point?
I was still in elementary school, I'm sorry.
And are you able to pinpoint a time frame based on that photo of how old you would have been in 2015? Or at least what school you were in 2015?
I know I was in elementary school, so I had to be in like 5th grade.
Judge, I would move that in as states Exhibit 1.
Mark it as Exhibit 1. Do you wish to have that passed to the jury?
I would like to publish it on the screens if that's an option.
It is an option.
Although, how do we do that with YouTube? That is what you would have looked like in 2015.
Yes, ma'am.
Now, during that time frame, did the defendant sexual contact with you?
Yes.
There are 2 different indictments during that time frame. How many times during that time frame contact with you?
Over 10 times.
During that time frame, what's the first incident that you can remember, a specific incident where the defendant had sex with you?
I was 8 or 9 years old. It was,
Well, we've got to go to this time frame between 2000.
Yes.
So when you were in elementary school,
yes,
2014, 2015, so you would have been older than 8.
yes,
You would probably been 9.
9, I think, yeah, 9 and a couple months. He woke me up from my bed and told me to be quiet and not to speak. He took me to his bedroom where my mom and the defendant slept. And he held me down and told me not to scream. And then came sex with me.
Where were your hands during
Your Honor,
this?
I'm sorry, but we're gonna have to object again.
I'm sorry.
We'll have to object again. I'm gonna have to ask for a jury out one more time.
Ladies and gentlemen, step across. Mitchell, if you'll state your objection.
Your Honor, we'll have to bring up our 404B objection. She just testified that she was 9 years old. Her birth date is at 9 years old. That puts her between the year of 2012 and 2013. She turns 11, I was at 14. And the indictment, the first 2 charges are from 14 to 15. So we're once again talking about something outside of the window in the indictment.
And Judge, that was probably my mistake. I offered that number instead of letting her do her own math. I can clarify.
Well, she's testifying about events that occurred during that you're saying occurred during the time frame of the indictment.
Yes, Judge.
The jury has to determine the credibility of her testimony and whether or not those events did in fact occur. I will instruct the jury again that the time frames that they're talking about will be those time frames that are set within the frame of that, and that they will have to make a determination as to whether or not this evidence fits that time frame. And they cannot consider the evidence of any crime that occurred outside of that time frame. In my opinion, that's an issue for the jury to determine. It is not a basis for me to sustain the objection, but rather to give a limiting instruction that the jury must remember that the time frame we're talking about. They can do the calculations. The defense can cross-examine her about her birth date, and bring that out if that's what you wish to. But I think that the attempt is being made to fit the alleged activity within the time frame of the indictment. And if it doesn't fit, then you must acquit. Bring the jury back. Ladies and gentlemen, as I explained to you when we ask you to step out, I'm the one who's asking you to step out to try to make sure that what I do does not affect your verdict and your decision in this case. In this case, I've told you the time frame from the indictment, and when you go back to deliberate, you're going to be given a copy of this indictment to take back with you. There are dates that are set forth that the alleged abuse has occurred within these time frames. So the state is attempting to introduce evidence that is alleging, according to them, that abuse occurred during that time frame. It will be your determination as to whether or not they have proven beyond a reasonable doubt that, in fact, there was an abuse that fits within that time frame. You cannot consider abuse that occurs outside of that time frame if it is alleged to have occurred. So does everyone understand that? Then I'm going to allow the state to continue with that limiting instruction that it must conform to the 2014 to 2015 and then again 2016 to 2018. All right.
All right. So it looks like I did some bad math.
It's okay, we both did.
So when you were 9, that was not 2014 to 2015. But that year that you were at Centennial, that you were in Centennial Singers, that choir program, the incident that you're talking about,
Yes,
where he came and got you, took you into his room,
yes,
did that occur in the 2014-2015 school year?
yes.
Was it during the day or the night?
During the day.
Where were you when he came to get you?
I was laying in my bed.
Why were you in bed?
It was the morning time.
Okay, I understand.
Yes.
So it was daytime, but it was morning, daytime.
Yes,
You had
sorry.
not gotten up yet.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Was anyone else in the house when that happened?
My mother and Danny and Coda, I think so.
Do you remember seeing them when he took you from your room?
No.
Do you know, you remember that your mother was home. Do you remember where she was?
I do not. I know she was either in the shower or going to get, groceries or.
And you remember that, why? I mean, why, you can remember that she was there,
Yes.
but you can't remember exactly where. Why is that?
I don't know. I don't remember.
How many times do you think something like this happened during that 2014-2015 school year?
Over 15 times.
When it would happen, would your mother always be home?
No.
Do each of those 10 events stand out clearly in your mind, or do they kind of bleed together, or something else?
Some bleed together.
Okay. Let's go back to this specific one, not in general, but this specific one that you remember.
Yes.
When he took you from your room, do you remember if Danny was there?
I do not remember.
Okay. When he took you from your room, what do you mean by that? Did he pick you up, take you by your hand, something else?
No, he grabbed my arm and he shook me to wake me up. He put his hand over my mouth and told me to be quiet and not to speak.
And what happened then?
He grabbed me by my arm and took me to the room, led me to the room.
Did you see any other person from your bedroom to his bedroom?
No.
Tell me about the setup of his bedroom in that house or trailer.
The bed was in the middle of the room. There was 2 windows behind the bed. The bed had these black bars and then dark wood. There was a white dresser, a small one, and then a clock. The dresser had paint taken off of it. It was old. There was also a bigger dresser next to it, not too far from it, that was white also and had paint taken off of it. There was clothes on the floor. You would walk into the bathroom and there would be a big tub, and then there'd be 2 sinks and then the toilet.
Was it a tub shower or just a tub there?
Just a tub.
So if your mom was in the shower, where was she in the house?
There's a shower by my room. So she was by my room.
When he took you into the room, was the bed made?
No.
Did the defendant and your mom have kind of a his side, her side of the bed?
Yes. He had closer to the door, and then she had closer to the bathroom
Where did he put you on the bed?
on his side.
Did he physically pick you up? How did you get onto the bed?
He told me to lay down.
Were you wearing pajamas or something else?
I was wearing pajamas, and then he took them off.
What type of pajamas did you usually sleep in at that age?
I slept in either a full, footy pajama onesie, or I slept in long pants and a tank top.
Do you remember what you were wearing that day?
I do not.
Do you remember what he was wearing?
I'm thinking he was wearing just cargo, not cargo shorts, but I can't explain them, I'm sorry. But they were dark gray, I think.
Was it an undergarment or something you would wear out in public?
You can wear it out in public, yes. It was like basketball shorts.
What, if anything, happened to his clothes?
They came off.
How did they come off?
He took them off.
Is he telling you anything while this has happened, while he's taking your clothes off and his clothes off?
Telling me to be quiet, that he's just teaching me, and that it'll be over if I just stop crying.
Were you crying?
Yes. I was telling him to stop.
What did he do once both of you were unclothed?
He got on top and held my arms down.
How did he hold your arms down?
Like that. Like this.
So you're crossing your arms, but you're saying he held
Yes.
the upper part of your arms
Yes.
to your body.
Yes.
What did he do after that?
He stuck his and then held his hand over my mouth so I'd stop screaming.
Did anything come out of this?
Yes. Sperm.
Did it come out inside your body or somewhere else?
On my stomach.
Did after he was done having sex with you, after he was done raping you, did he say anything? Did he do anything? What happened?
He just told me not to tell my mom. He said he wouldn't care. He was going to leave her anyway.
What did you do after he was done raping you?
I asked him why.
Did he ever tell you why?
Just that he was teaching me.
You said he laid it onto your stomach.
Yes.
What did you do at that point? Did you clean yourself off? Please explain what happened after that.
I cleaned myself off with a towel and then went to the bathroom and cleaned the blood off of my legs and went to go pee.
Did you have pain anywhere during or after the sexual?
Yes.
Can you explain that?
In my vagina.
Did you ever have blood in your underwear?
Yes.
Was that before the time you started your period or after?
Before.
Did your mom ever ask about it?
No. She just thought I started my period and I just didn't tell her.
Is there a time in that time period when something like this happened, but that Danielle Cathey was present
During it or?
at the house?
Yes.
Can you explain that? Like where did the two of you sleep?
Me and Danielle Cathey, we slept in the same bed. So she slept in the bed with me.
And was there a time that Rocky came to get you from the bed during this time frame, 2014 to 2015, that she was there in the bed with you?
Yes.
Did she wake up?
No. I tried to wake her up.
Can you explain that?
I would tell her the night before, I would ask her to wake up if I pinched her, or I would tell her to switch spots with me and cover her head in the morning so that maybe he would wake her up and I wouldn't have to go in there.
So on the morning that he came to get you that she was in the bed, what did you do?
I pinched her and I would kick her.
And did she wake up?
No.
Sorry, I already asked you that. So even with you kicking and pinching, you did not see her wake up.
I did not see her wake up, no.
On that day, you're pinching her and he's taking you from the bed. How is he taking you from the bed?
He's doing the same thing, covering my mouth, whispering, telling me to be quiet and come to the bed with him, and it'll be over with. And he got me by the arm again and took me to the bedroom.
And what happened?
He would, again,
This time that we're talking about that Danielle was present and you were pinching her and trying to wake her up, where was Dakota?
he was either in his bedroom or on the couch.
So he did not sleep in the same room with the two of you.
No.
Do you remember seeing him on the way to the bedroom?
That time, no.
When you got in the bedroom, and is this, this is still in the trailer, so still the same bedroom that you described.
Yes, ma'am.
What happened?
Can you explain?
What happened when you got, I know you may say it's similar, but the jury has to understand each time what happened.
Yes, ma'am.
So when you went in, when he brought you into the bedroom, what happened?
He would, again, hold me down because I would scream and tell him no, put his hand over my mouth, and then forcefully after telling him no.
When did you move to Rocky Drive?
I'm not too sure, I'm sorry.
Okay. Will you tell me how old you were the last time it happened?
15.
So your birthday, when were you born?
2003.
So that would have been in 2018. Tell me about the last time that he had sex.
He told me that it had to be special because it was our last time. And that I needed to get in the bed and just listen to it be over with and then it'd be done. I still cried and I tried to hit him. And then he just put my hand behind my back and then forcefully.
Now, the last two times that you've talked about, were you on the top or the bottom?
The bottom.
This last time you said that he said it had to be special.
Yes.
Was it different in some way?
I was on the top.
And why did he say it was going to be the last time?
Because I told him that I was going to tell my mom and that he said it was just the last time that I didn't need to tell her.
Were you afraid of the defendant?
Yes,
Why were you afraid of the defendant?
because he would heavily drink and hit me and yell at me.
During the time that your mother and the defendant were married, did she drink a lot?
Yes,
And when we say a lot, that can mean different things to different people. When your mom and the defendant started drinking, what was it like?
they would have parties, so they would have tons of people over, mostly parents. So I would be stuck with watching their kids, cleaning up the broken bottles, holding my mother's hair back. He also yelled at me one time because it was a school night and I wanted to go to bed. He turned the music up really loud and I tried to turn it down and he smacked me. There was also a time where I didn't want to hold my mom's hair back because I wanted to go to bed so I could go to school in the morning without being tired. And he screamed at me and told me I didn't love my mother.
I'm going to show you something else. Alexis, what is that?
It's a Father's Day card.
When you say it's a Father's Day card, it's not just a blank Father's Day card. Who wrote that card?
Me,
Who was it given to?
the defendant.
What time frame do you think you wrote that card?
No, I was older than probably 9 or 10.
Can you read it?
I'm lucky you're my dad. Happy Father's Day. I love you, Daddy. You're an amazing father. Thanks for Thanks for being my dad when I didn't have one. And making my mom as happy as she is. Love, Lexi.
Why'd you write that, Lexi?
My mom made all of us write one. Every Father's Day and every Mother's Day.
Judge, I would move that in as Exhibit 2.
Exhibit 2.
Did you tell your mom more than once what was happening?
I told her that once, and then the day after Miss Pulley.
At the time that you spoke to the therapist about what happened, were the defendant and your mom together?
Yes.
Now, they weren't married anymore, right?
No, they were divorced.
Where would he sleep during that time?
He would either jump from his friend's house or sleep in my mom's room.
And how long had they been separated before they got back together?
Probably about a couple months, I think.
During the time between, because you talked about the last time it happened,
Yes.
and he told you he was going to break up with your mom.
Yes.
Did he break up with your mom after that?
No.
Did they break up off and on? How was their relationship?
It was a little rocky, but they stayed together.
But they divorced?
Yes, they did, because I told her that I wanted her to, that I didn't feel safe around him.
Was there ever any time being you that someone almost came in?
Danny, he wasn't being mean then, but I had her hide in a closet. And then when he tried something, I tried to get her to come out, but she said she never saw anything.
The person that we've talked about, the defendant, is he in the courtroom?
Yes, ma'am.
Can you point to him? Judge, I would ask that the record would reflect that she has identified the defendant.
All right, the record will reflect that the witness has identified the defendant.
And Judge, I have no further questions at this point in time.
Defense have questions?
Alexis, let's start off with a timeline.
Okay.
If that's all right with you. I'm gonna get a big board. We're gonna write the dates up on there so it's a little bit easier to keep track of this for both yourself and the jury.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yes, sir.
We're now ready to proceed with the cross-examination, Mr. Mitchell.
Thank you, Judge. Alexis, I'm gonna have to move around here and I'm gonna hopefully be on this microphone enough, but
Bryson, you want to move back where you can see?
Yes, Judge, if I may.
And I may step back from time to time to be able to see what's going on as well.
it's scary. It's a lot of power to have a microphone. Alexis, as a lawyer, most of us, we don't math, right? I personally like math, but math is difficult, so I'm going to start off. We're talking about a time frame between the age of 11 and 12, is that correct?
Yes.
All right, so we're building up all the way to 2011 here. What age were you when you met Rocky?
I was 5 or 6 years old.
All right, so you believe you're 5 or 6, so then that's sometime in what year?
2008 and 2009.
Y'all can get the idea, right? I'm not going to take the time to write all this out. So this helps you, though, right? This helps you
Yes.
understand a little bit better about where you're at on age and times of things.
Yes.
Okay, so, and Judge, I'll just turn this to you because it's not very sophisticated, but we're, all right. So let's talk about how this works out. Now, thinking about that, when you met him, was he married to your mother?
No, they were just dating.
But did they live together?
Yes.
Okay. Do you know when they got married?
I do not.
Do you remember how old you were when they got married?
I do not. I'm sorry. I remember around what age I might have been.
So what is your around? What age?
Maybe around 8, I think.
So you think it was probably somewhere in the 2011 range?
I think so.
Okay. And you think you met him when you're 5 or 6?
Yes.
And when do you think you moved to Rocky Drive?
I know it was after they got married, I think. I'm sorry.
You don't have to be sorry. We're just trying to get an idea of when things occurred.
I have no idea. I'm sorry.
It's okay. So we're going to think about this. You also had a picture that was now Exhibit 2 of a Father's Day card. Do you know when you would have done that?
I'm sorry.
Do you think you would have done that before these alleged abuses happened or after?
After.
After, okay. And do you recall posting that on Facebook?
I don't remember it, but I guess I did it because it was off of my Facebook.
Do you recall posting another image with it?
I don't.
Your Honor, may I approach the witness?
You may.
So, if those were off of your Facebook, is it fair to say that you posted both that image and the Father's Day card at the same time?
Yes, sir.
Okay. When you, and Your Honor, we would move those to be the next exhibit.
Right.
Both
These
those
are two,
items.
there's a photograph and then an expanded photograph showing the date.
Yes, sir.
Be marked as Exhibit 3, is that correct?
So, when you look, I'm sorry, I'm gonna have to ask her to look at it again. Looking at that, when did you post it on Facebook?
When did I?
Yes, ma'am.
It says June 19th, 2016.
Okay, so we're off the chart here. We're gonna have to move around. We'll say in 2015, you were 12. In 2016, you were 13. And in 2017, you were 14. So that was what day in 2016?
June 19th.
So June 19th. So you'd been 13 for a month or so.
Yes.
Okay. If you could hand that to Madam Clerk, she has to mark it as an exhibit. Now, and Your Honor, once that's been marked, if we could just pass pass that around to the jurors so they can see the image. Publish it.
Was good.
Now,
We had not demonstrated the other photograph, but we'll go ahead and pass this one to the jury.
I think the other one was published through video, and they had
It
no.
was published by large screen camera, you're right. Thank you.
Sorry.
Exhibit 2 was not passed, but she read the text.
Okay.
Father's Day card was not.
Yes, exhibit 2 was not published, I don't believe, but she read the text.
Well, then I would ask the court if they could pass both of them around at the same time. Those are,
Go ahead and pass all three of them to the jury.
All right.
Photographs.
okay. So you've got events that you're saying happened sometime when you were 11 or 12, and another one that you're saying you know happened when you were 15.
Yes.
Okay. So that would have been sometime in 2018, summer, winter. Could have been sometime in 2019.
2015. Sorry, 2018.
Well, it's from May 7th of 2018 till May 7th of 2019, you'd have been 15 years old. So there's,
Yes.
but you believe it happened in 2018,
Yes.
and you believe, you don't know whether or not it was in the summer or the winter.
I do not.
Anything like that. Would that have been before your mother and Mr. Cathey were divorced?
Yes.
So it was before they were divorced. Would it have been before they separated? Because I assume they separated for a period before they got divorced.
They did. They separated for a couple, like a week or two. But they did that back and forth until they divorced.
Okay. And do you know when they were divorced?
I don't remember the date.
Okay. But you believe that the events that would have been the last time occurred before they were separated or divorced?
Yes.
Okay. I'm going to flip this over because we're going to make a probably really bad drawing. Okay? I'm sorry, I've got terrible handwriting. I'll call it a bad drawing. Let's talk about what the trailer looked like.
Okay.
All right? And I'm going to cheat because I know what it looks like. But I'm going to have you tell me where things are.
Okay.
So we'll start off. It's a single wide trailer, correct?
Yes.
The driveway, where you parked? Over here?
No.
No? Where were
On the
cars
other
parked?
side.
On this side?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So we're gonna say this is where the cars would come in, so the road's that way?
Yes. It's a long driveway.
Long driveway comes in from the road that way.
Yes.
What door would you enter?
The front.
Is it down here?
Yes. You can enter the front or the back.
Like, there's one right in there, and there's one right here, right?
Yes, sir.
All right, so does it open like this, I assume? And then I think it's like that?
Yes. I
Okay.
think so.
But are there steps on this side?
Yes. There's steps on both
There's
sides.
steps on both sides, but where did you normally come in?
I normally came in the front.
This one?
Yes.
Okay. So we'll just put a set of stairs right here. Now, what do you see when you first come in the house?
The living room.
And what's on this side of the living room?
One of the couches.
So there's a couch like right here. And then there's like a half wall.
There's a couch further to the back.
Another one that, is it facing this right in here?
Yes.
And then, but there's a kitchen over here, right?
Yes, sir.
Kind of angles in here. And then what's back here?
Their room.
Your mom's room.
Yes.
Is there a bathroom up here?
Yes.
So this is where the tub would be?
No.
No,
The
but-
tub would be on the other side, and that is where the toilet would be. And then the sinks would be not right there.
There's a bathroom right up here, right? There's
Yes.
the bathroom that had the tub in it is up
Yes.
here. And then their bedroom, the bed's down here.
Yes.
So something like that. And then I've made this too big, or I'm off scale, because over here are the two bedrooms and a bathroom.
Yes.
So there's a bathroom in the middle, and there's closets in this area too, but whose room is this?
Dakota's.
So that's Dakota's room. And then this is,
That is a bathroom, and my bedroom goes all the way. Yeah.
okay. So then this is Alexis and Danielle, which are on the same bed right in here.
Yes.
And there's a hallway, but, you know, like I said, terrible scale, terrible drawing. The idea, though, is that your story is that he would come all the way across the house. Where does Dakota normally sleep?
Either on the couch or in his room. He usually didn't like to sleep in his room, though.
He typically slept on the couch.
Yeah.
This one?
No.
This one?
Yes, the larger
The
one.
larger one, okay. And there's a TV like right in here?
Yes.
It's like right there. So you're saying that Mr. Cathey would come across the house, your mom would be in this bathroom,
It depends if she was showering, yes.
and then take you past Dakota's room and the living room where he might be, all the way over to here.
Yes.
And he's got his hand over your mouth?
Yes. Not the whole way there, but yes.
Okay. And are you screaming while he's taking you across the building?
No, I'm crying.
You're crying.
Yes.
Did you testify that you would scream and cry?
I would scream in the room, yes.
Okay. And the events they're violent, right? They're
Yes.
He's holding you down.
Yes.
You're hitting him.
Yes.
You're causing, I assume, some kind of commotion.
Yes.
And there's 3 other people in the house. Were there other people in the house?
No.
There was never anyone else when the stuff was going on, just your family?
Yes.
Animals?
Yes.
I can have just a minute, Your Honor. That's all I want, Your Honor.
One moment, Judge. I have nothing further, Judge.
Nothing further?
Yes, Judge.
Thank you, ma'am. You may step down. Do you want to leave her under the rule or allow her to be in the courtroom?
She can be released from the rule, Judge.
You may stay in the courtroom if you'd like. Thank you. They may call your next witness.
State calls Danielle Cathey. Danielle, how old are you?
I'm 16.
Who is Rocky Cathey to you?
My biological father.
And who is Alexis Harrison?
She was my stepsister.
So you, were there times that you would go over to the house when Alexis's mom and your biological dad were still married?
Yes.
Did you live there all the time?
No, only on weekends.
When you stayed there, would you share a room with Alexis?
Yes.
Would you share a bed with Alexis?
Yes.
Do you ever remember any incidents where you woke up with her pinching you?
Yes.
Can you explain that just a little bit?
Well, the bed was against the wall, and I woke up and I was facing the wall. And she was pinching, I think it was my arm, it might have been my hand, and I felt the bed shaking, and I didn't really know what to do. And then it felt like she was getting pulled out of the bed, and then the door shut and opened, or it opened and shut, and then I turned around and no one was there.
Nothing further, Judge.
Judge, you have any questions?
Who all was at the house when that happened?
My stepsister Alexis, my biological father Rocky, my brother Dakota, and his friend Andrew.
Andrew who?
Bolton, I think.
Okay. And was her mother there?
No.
Okay, just a second. How old were you?
I think I was maybe a little older than 10.
Okay. And do you know what the age difference is between you and Alexis?
3 years, I think.
Okay. And do you recall ever being asked to hide in the closet?
No.
Nothing further.
Anything redirect?
Just to clarify, and for the sake of my memory, I just asked you and you answered and I have forgotten. How old are you now?
16.
So you think that would have been about 6 years ago? Thank you, nothing further.
Anything follow up?
No, Your Honor.
Thank you, ma'am. You may step down and you are released from your subpoena, so you may stay or go as you please. They may call your next witness.
State will call Helen Potter. How are you related to Alexis Harrison?
She's my niece.
Are you the sister of her mother?
Yes.
Now, I'm about to ask you a series of questions that are going to be worded kind of weirdly, okay? Because we can't talk about what people told you. But was there a point in time that you became aware of sexual abuse allegation that Rocky had done something to Alexis?
Yes.
Without saying what people told you, what did you do when that allegation came forward?
Well, I confronted him. Well, my husband did. I confronted my husband and he confronted Rocky.
And did Rocky, now, this specifically, did Rocky deny anything had happened? What did he say when he was confronted?
Your Honor, lack of personal knowledge.
You're going to have to lay a foundation of personal knowledge for her to be able to testify about that. Sustain the objection.
Were you present when he confronted Rocky?
Yes.
How did Rocky respond to the confrontation?
He didn't really say a whole, he just cried.
Okay. Did you, at that point, believe Alexis?
Yes.
Did you tell anybody what the allegation was?
Your Honor, we're going to have you hear you out on this. I'm sorry.
Ladies and gentlemen, step across the hallway, please.
We're getting dangerously close to some very bad.
Is that microphone on?
Your Honor, I'm sorry, I'm objecting, and I don't know the proper objection outside of, this is not information that was ever given to us, and I understand that it's not required to be given to us until after she testifies, but surrounding all of this are a lot of things that are going to cause a mistrial. And I think the state's aware of that. I don't think that response was what the state had thought they were going to get. And I don't know what to object to other than to say, I'm scared to move forward because I don't want to have a mistrial at this point.
Judge, maybe I can ask some clarifying questions.
Well, what we're going to do is while the jury's out, we're going to let you ask your questions and let her answer them. And then we'll determine whether or not there needs to be a recess for him to take any preparatory action before we commence with cross-examination tomorrow.
Okay. All right, Ms. Potter, so when Alexis made this disclosure, and I'm going to skip forward, at the end of
Let me
everything.
interrupt you again, I'm sorry, Joan. What specifically are you referring to that you were claiming surprise that this is the first time you've heard of it?
Two things. One, her previous statements were that he denied it, and two, she had said she didn't believe her at the time. But our investigator has spoken to
Technically, it
her.
doesn't
I know that those aren't.
The lay witness is not entitled to testify whether they believe or don't believe someone. There was no objection made to her testimony at that point. But had you objected to it at that point, I would have sustained the objection. The witness cannot, we can't bring people in to testify who say, well, I believe when she said something to me, I believed it, unless it somehow is relevant to the issues. Is there a relevance to that?
Judge, that's why I would like to ask a series of clarifying questions, because I anticipated the answer to that question to be no, otherwise I would not have asked it.
And I would
What
object
did
to
you-
it.
What did you ask?
I asked at the time of the allegation, did she believe her?
And you expected her to say no.
And she said yes, and I
She said
think I
yes.
can clarify that.
All right, I'm going to allow you to do that. So we'll see where we are since we're out of the jury's hearing.
Ms. Potter, did you call the police that day to tell them about the allegations?
Oh,
Did you call DCS to tell them about the allegations?
no,
Why not?
because I felt like she was jealous of the relationship between.
You're going to have to speak up a little bit, ma'am.
I'm sorry, because I felt like she was jealous between the relationship of her new stepfather. That she was, like when she was a child, she would tell little fibs, and we didn't know, I asked her, when she first said it, yes. I said, what are we gonna do, but she kind of acted, I don't know. It was just, she was little, and I wanted to make sure that everything was true, because I didn't want there to be, because it's his life, her mama's life, her life, so.
Judge, I think a better question of did you believe her would have been, why didn't you do anything?
Well, the jury's already heard her say she believed her.
And I can clarify that to say, your gut reaction was to believe the child, but you didn't end up doing anything. I don't know, Judge.
Mr. Mitchell, it was your objection that led us to this point, so.
Initially, I wasn't objecting because all information I've been given was that she was going to be a negative witness on the state's behalf, that she was going to say she didn't believe what was going on, that she didn't think that it happened. So I wasn't prepared to object to someone that the state was going to call them and say, no, I didn't believe this child when she was saying this. But it's pure bolstering at this point if you put her on and she says yes. And I think that there are more reasons that she's like you get very philosophical about how people change their mind as time goes on when people have been charged with things. But I
This is
don't
not the
think-
first time that a witness has testified differently than what the state was expecting. I've had some experience in that at trial myself, so all I can tell you is that this is not information that would have been discoverable because the state did not anticipate this answer. So for that reason, it's not a violation of the discovery rule because the state was expecting her to state what you expected her to state. And the fact that she then came back and said something different, I will allow both sides to clarify that with both direct questions by the state and cross-examination by you. But it is not a basis for, in my opinion, an objection to her testimony simply because she's testifying differently than what both sides expected her to. That goes to her credibility more than anything. So with that, anything else before we bring the jury back? I will allow the state to follow up with those limited questions that you're proposing that point out the fact that whether she believed her or not, she didn't do anything. And then we'll bring the jury in. Bring the jury in.
Judge, the only other follow-up that I plan on asking is, did she make any other disclosures to you after that day?
All right.
Ms. Potter, after the disclosure that your niece made, did you call the police?
No,
Did you call DCS to report it?
no.
Why didn't you do those things?
I wanted to make sure that everything that was told was true. And I'm gonna just go off on, I wanted to make sure everything was right.
Nothing further, Judge.
Cross-examination?
Isn't it true that during the time frame that you're talking about, that there were some jealousy issues going on with Alexis in respect to Mr. Cathey and her mother that you observed?
Yeah, because she'd always had her mom to herself.
And isn't it true that during the time frame that this was going on, that you had some reason to have an opinion that she was not necessarily always a truthful person?
Yeah, because she was very young and.
Nothing further.
Redirect?
I'm sorry, I'm not sure if you got cut off on the end of that. Did you want to finish that answer?
Objection, Your Honor. Well,
I don't know what the gestures
I
mean,
don't
Mr.
know,
Mitchell.
I don't know how to do this without a court reporter, but I would like to approach or.
Oh, let's just all stay where you are, ladies and gentlemen. Let me see counsel around. Gentlemen, I didn't want you to be the only ones who got to get up and walk around a little bit during the middle of the trial. So as I said, we'd handle it that way. And we've handled it so that you don't have to leave. I think the state has now arrested their redirect. Is that correct?
Judge.
All right. And we finished them with this witness.
Yes, Your Honor.
All right, ma'am, you can step down. You are released from your subpoena. You can go about your business.
Judge, the state will call Misty Cathey. And you were married to the defendant for a period of time.
Yes.
What is the date range of when you were married to the defendant? Roughly.
2010 to 2019.
When you first began dating the defendant, where did you live?
My mother's.
What is that address? And when you left your mother's, where did you live?
On Rocky Drive.
Do you know how long you lived there?
I think 8 or 9 years.
Do you know the date range, maybe? Rocky Drive, what city is that in?
Dixon.
And that's also in Dixon County?
Yes, ma'am.
After you left Rocky Drive, where did you move?
My current address.
And you don't have to, you don't have to put your address on, but is that in Dixon as well?
Yes, ma'am.
So Rocky Drive, was that a trailer?
Yes.
And the Nottingham is a house?
Yes, ma'am.
Did the defendant live with you at all three of those addresses?
No.
Where did he live with you?
On Rock Church and Rocky Drive.
And after you divorced, what was your relationship like?
On and off.
At the time that law enforcement came to speak to your daughter, what was your relationship with the defendant? Were you on or off?
Kind of on.
Was he coming around the house?
Yes.
How often?
Like once a week.
Do you remember your daughter telling you about sexual abuse allegations with Rocky?
No, I don't.
Were you drinking heavily during the time that you and Rocky were together?
Off and on, yes.
Where did you work during that time?
NHC.
Was your daughter ever alone with the defendant?
Yes.
How often?
Some afternoons and on weekends when she was home.
Do you, nothing further, Judge.
Miss Cathey, how long did you date Rocky before you got married?
A year and a half, 2 years.
So how old would Alexis have been when she met Rocky?
7, maybe 8.
Do you remember
Kathy, I
what
need you to pull that microphone. We're having to record
Sorry.
everything that's said, so I really need you to speak into the microphone.
So, do you remember what date you were married?
I don't remember the exact date, just 2010.
Okay. So, and how old did you say your daughter was when you were married?
Oh, I don't know how old she was when we got married. When we met, she was like 7 or 8.
Okay. Your daughter was born in 2003, and you were married in 2010. So she would have been 7 when you got married?
I guess.
And you believe that you were,
I was just guessing.
do you know when you and Rocky separated? Now, approach the witness, Your Honor.
You ready?
I want you to look over this, see if it helps you remember. Let's start at page 2. All right, so looking over that, do you remember what exact date you married Rocky?
Yes, November 26, 2010.
And do you recall what date that you separated from Rocky?
It says March 2018.
So, what day were you divorced?
August 2019.
I just want to, we've gone through a lot of dates there. August 2019 is when the divorce is finalized, but the separation is in March of 18.
Yes, sir.
Y'all living together after March of 18?
No.
And then, did you ever have any reason to believe that something was going on with your daughter and Rocky?
No, sir.
She never disclosed to you, that you recall?
Not that I can recall.
Nothing further, Your Honor.
Redirect.
Helen Potter is your sister, right?
Yes, ma'am.
You said that your daughter never disclosed to you that you can remember.
Not that I can remember.
Do you remember an incident where you were around Helen and that she brought it to your attention and you talked to Alexis then?
Helen told me about it, but I don't remember it.
Okay, nothing further, Judge.
Judge, the next witness will be fairly lengthy.
Is this the Detective Johnson?
Yes, Judge.
Ladies and gentlemen, we were talking about timing and so forth, and I don't like to go late at night if it's not going to be able to be finished anyway, because I think we all lose our sense of focus and concentration. So what we're going to do is we're going to stop here for the day, because the next witness is going to be much more lengthy than some of the others. Stand in recess until tomorrow morning, and actually we're going to adjourn until 9 o'clock tomorrow.